Hey boys and girls, it's Wootini from GayGamer.net, here with another one of my video podcasts. I apologize for my voice this week. It's a little bit off because last night I was out with some fellow gay gamers and we were out kind of drinking and partying and having a good time. It was Ruben's birthday. So, shouting in a bar, and it was St. Patrick's Day, so, you know, that just made it even worse. But it just meant that the drunk people were wearing more green than usual. So my voice is a little bit raspy. Anyway, this week is still all about the Mass Effect 3. And what I wanted to talk about this week is the story. Now, I'm not going to get into spoilers, because I've already said that anyone who spoils anything in Mass Effect 3 for me will die a horrible, painful, agonizing, slow death. So, I will be very careful so as not to spoil things for all of you, although I'm sure that most of you are further along in the game than I am. But what fascinates me about Mass Effect is that, and I felt this in, maybe not the first game, but in the second game, I was very attached to some of these characters. So in the third game, I'm like super attached to these characters, and I'm very concerned about their fates. Not all of them, obviously, because some of them I'm less attached to. Like, I feel really bad. You know, I talked last week about the whole Caden Thane thing, and I basically decided that I want Caden back, but he was a jerk in the second game, so I ended up with Thane. And now I feel really bad because Thane is all like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, sorry dude, I've got my actual boyfriend back, so I don't need to second best, sorry. But I didn't say that, obviously, because, well, it wasn't a dialogue option in the first place, but also because that's just rude. But that's the sort of thing where I'm actually having these feelings while I'm playing the game. I feel bad for Thane, and I'm like, this is really crappy of me. And also, you know, when certain characters are meeting their fate, you know, and I have grown very attached to these characters, and I am experiencing emotions that I have not really experienced in a video game before. Now, I have had video games make me a little bit sad, a little bit emotional, but I don't recall ever shedding tears, actual tears, until Mass Effect 3. Now, it might have just been that I was doped up on cold medicine last week, that day, but there was a scene where I literally, like, I started welling up, and then they just started running down my face, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm actually sitting here literally crying over a cutscene in a video game. Like, what is wrong with me? I'm not even saying what it was about. No spoilers. But it was so good. I mean, it wasn't good, because it was sad, but, you know, it was very emotional, and I thought it was great that a video game could pull that emotion out of me. Usually video games are all about the excitement and the adrenaline, and fear is another easy one. But actual, like, emotion is really hard to pull off. I remember the first time I actually got a little upset at a video game, and that was, and I'm going way back here, was Vi on the Sega CD. It was a working design, that's it, working design games. It was an RPG with little anime cutscenes, and at one point during the game, your, like, funny, wacky sidekick who's so cute and fun and whatever, and gets all the funny dialogue, he dies. And it's during a cutscene, so there's nothing you can do about it. And I remember being like, what? That's not fair. Because usually when you're playing an RPG, you know, you phoenix down or revive or bring them back to the temple for the priest to bring them back, like, whatever. You know, like, there's, whatever game it is, there's a way to bring your character back to life, unless they die in a cutscene, in which case, then it's permanent. So, it's a little rude, but it's fascinating because you have a video game where you are making the decisions and you are ostensibly in control of how things are happening, and then they have a cutscene, and the game is like, yeah, you're not in control of this part. So you give up control over what's happening because it's a cutscene, and that's where they can screw you. you know, and obviously the most famous example of that is Final Fantasy VII, but honestly, I wasn't really as affected by Aeris's death as quite a lot of people were. It's a little weird. Although it's funny, because I was like, it's just a video game, like, whatever. But I actually shed a tear over Mass Effect. So, just because it's a game doesn't mean that it can't elicit emotions. I mean, the only other game... I will say that Lost Odyssey... one of the gameplay aspects of Lost Odyssey is that you're collecting memories, and the memories are displayed in, like, this very artistic fashion with, like, the text and some images floating and revealing or whatever, and the music's playing, and just because of the way they were artistically presented, I remember a couple of those memories, like, kind of touching me and making me go, aw, you know. I mean, I didn't cry or anything, but I remember thinking, oh, that's really quite lovely. And it elicited kind of an emotion from me. Because the only game recently that I can think of that made me feel was Heavy Rain. I know some people hated it. I know some people loved it. I happen to love it, because I'm into that kind of, like, interactive fiction kind of thing. And I loved the fact that, you know, based on your choices, the game would spool out differently, you know. But, like, I'm sorry, that scene, if you've played it, you know the scene I'm talking about at the playground, and you are having such a good time with your son, and it is awesome and wonderful. I was sitting there pushing the stupid button to push him on the swing, like, beaming. And then he's like, oh, let's go on this. And I'm like, yes, let's go on that. And I'm, like, beaming, because I was, like, feeling this character's emotion of, oh, my son who doesn't like me, we're having a good day finally. And we're having fun at the playground. And then, of course, things go horribly wrong, and I was devastated. And that's another game where I got so invested in the characters and the storyline that, like, certain choices have to be made, and I was like, ooh, I need to think about that for a minute. So far, there have not been any of those decisions in Mass Effect 3, because the big major decisions that I've had to make in Mass Effect 3 so far have kind of been no-brainers. Like, there was one where I was just like, oh, seriously? No, I'm not doing that. That's really shitty. I can't. No. I wouldn't personally be able to live with myself. I know it's just a game, and I know that in the game I could do this and maybe come out a little bit better. But me personally, knowing that in the game I did this, I personally would have a moral problem with it. So I'm just like, no. Like, I'm role-playing a character, but that character is doing the things that I would do. So I'm like, no, we're not going to be we're not doing that. Again, it's really hard to talk about because I'm trying to be wicked vague, so as not to spoil anything. Although this isn't really necessarily a spoiler of, like, that I think people would mind, but I'm still not going to talk about any specifics. I did start multiplayer. Finally, I caved. I just don't like playing online multiplayer at all. But it's co-op, which helps. So, I started that for the first time this weekend, but I wanted to talk about emotions in video games instead, so next week I'm going to be discussing multiplayer after I've had a chance to play a little bit more of it, because it's still early days and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing and learning the controls and whatnot, because it's completely different from the actual game. Well, not completely, but slightly, and annoyingly so. But I just have to say, Mass Effect, thank you, and I would love to see them make a movie out of this, because I think it would just be it would be an epic science fiction adventure film, and I would go see it and a bunch of times. Unless they screwed it up. Also, I don't know that I'd want a male shepherd, because every time I hear a clip of male shepherd's voice acting, I don't like it. I've been playing FemShep through the whole 3 games, and because I couldn't make a male shepherd that looked like me, and so I went with a female, and I'd also heard that her voice acting was better. So I haven't gone back to play it as a guy, which I will eventually do at some point in the future when I've won the lottery and I have all this time to play video games. But every time I see a clip or hear any voice acting from the male shepherd, I am just sadly disappointed. I think they could have done a better job. I mean, everybody else in the game is really pretty good as far as voice acting. I mean, I didn't even know that was, I think James Vega is Freddie Prinze Jr. You'd never know that. I didn't. Unless I read that wrong. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now and stop rambling and go get some more tissues and play some more Mass Effect. So I will see you back here, same time, same channel, next week. Bye!